And, nothing brings up bigger feelings than our friendships. And sometimes those are really positive, wonderful, delightful, happy feelings that we can't get enough of. But then sometimes things don't go the way we want. And then those feelings are really difficult and painful. It's hard. It's vulnerable. It's not something you want to talk about publicly. So I think it's a real need. The more women I've talked to about this, I'm like, everybody goes through it at some point in their life.
Hey there, you're listening to the Girls Talking Life podcast, and I'm your host, Johanna. If you're like me, you love time with friends. I always leave feeling encouraged, inspired to try something different, or I've learned something new. So why not continue to grow even when we can't be with our girlfriends? We're not made to do life on our own. So in each episode of this show, I'll bring you a girl and her story to give you refreshing ideas to stir your soul. Let's walk this road together. Are you ready to talk life? Hi there, you are listening to episode number 137. Girls Talking Life is all about cultivating community and creating meaningful connections. In pursuit of that mission, I am launching Girls Talking Life groups. It's like a book club, but for the podcast. You listen to an episode, then get together with friends to discuss, reflect, and apply it to your lives. I have created reflection guides for some of the series and standalone episodes, so the work has been done for you. Just listen and discuss. The Girls Talking Life podcast and reflection guides were recently approved by my local church to be used as small group curriculum, and now you can use them for your small group too. If you don't have a small group, start one. Grab the Girls Talking Life group QUICKSTART guide. I outline a couple of simple steps, answer a few questions you may have, and tell you exactly how I'd start if I were starting a group. Because I am. I am hosting a group this summer at my house, and I encourage you to do the same. Find the link for the Girls Talking Life group QUICKSTART guide in the show notes. On the flip side, we have all experienced a friendship breakup. Maybe you were able to reconcile, or maybe you're in the middle of the turmoil right now, or maybe your friendship has distinctly ended. Relationships are hard, and not all of them are for the long haul, which is why I am so grateful to my guest, Laing Thompson, who is here to walk us through what to do when a friendship falls apart. You'll hear us talk about why that might happen, navigating the pain of those broken friendships, keeping the hurt that we are feeling from affecting our other relationships, and then steps toward healing. Laing Thompson is the author of many books for women and teens, including All the Feels for Teens, and When God Says series. She writes at ElizabethLangThompson.com about clinging to Christ through the chaos of daily life. As a speaker and novelist, Elizabeth loves finding humor in holiness and hope and heartache. She lives in North Carolina with her preacher husband and 4 spunky kids. Here is my conversation with Elizabeth. Elizabeth, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
I am thrilled to be talking to you. I've been looking forward to this conversation. You are the author of several books, but your latest is a little different. It is called When a Friendship Falls Apart, Finding God's Path for Healing, Forgiveness, and Maybe Letting Go. Why friendship, and why this particular aspect of friendship?
Yeah. Well, I often tell people that I sort of write at the intersection of faith and feelings, especially the messy feelings. And so some of my previous books have been, I wrote a book called All the Feels about just like processing life with your emotions in a healthy, godly way. And, nothing brings up bigger feelings than our friendships. And sometimes those are really positive, wonderful, delightful, happy feelings that we can't get enough of. But then sometimes things don't go the way we want. And then those feelings are really difficult and painful. And so, honestly, my publisher saw a need for this. They were like, we are hearing a lot of this. And they came to me and said, is this something that you would be willing to speak into? And I thought back on my own story and my life and my experiences. And I was like, you know what? I have lived this more times than I wish I had. And so I'm really grateful for the opportunity to step into this conversation because it's hard. It's vulnerable. It's not something you want to talk about publicly. So I think it's a real need. The more women I've talked to about this, the more I'm like, everybody goes through it at some point in their life.
I couldn't agree more. It is very needed. And to get our listeners kind of thinking through their own situations, what are some reasons that friendships might fall apart? I mean, there's tons, but what are some off the top of your head?
Sure. It's funny. I think, of course, like the reasons are as numerous as are the number of people, experiencing the struggle in a friendship. And yet I think when we kind of take a step back and hear a lot of different people's stories, you start to hear sort of some recurring themes of things that go wrong. Sometimes it's as simple as having mismatched expectations. Mm-hmm. Or even another way of saying that would be just having different definitions of friendship. Like, for example, my sister and I always laugh because in thinking about the 5 love languages, we're not really quality time people. I mean, I love spending time with people, but I'm more of a words and gifts person. So I don't need a ton of time with my friends to feel close. I've also moved a lot. So for me, I've had to learn to survive on like minimal FaceTime with friends. And yet for someone who's a quality time person, that could feel hurtful because she's like, hey, I expect my friends to set up a monthly coffee date or shopping time. We need to hang out consistently or we are not close. And so those mismatched expectations can really lead to little hurt feelings over time that build and build and build, and then one day really become a problem. I think sometimes we move into a different season of life than a friend, and we struggle to navigate the change. Yeah. I think especially in our younger years, when life is changing a lot, somebody gets married and someone is still single. That's a hard one to navigate. Or like I went through a season of infertility and all of my friends were getting pregnant and moving into motherhood without me. It was very difficult to maintain that connection and not feel different or excluded. We did. I didn't lose any friends through that time, but it was challenging. Yeah. And you can't always maintain it. So I think there are things like that can really come in and harm us. And sometimes it's as simple as not being honest about hurt feelings and resolving them along the way. Because listen, if you're going to be friends with someone for more than like 2 or 3 months, you're going to hurt each other's feelings. You're going to let each other down and you have to talk about it, or it builds and builds. And then suddenly you're like, we're not close anymore. We have an issue.
Well, you say that broken friendship is a wound, which I completely agree with. The closer the friendship, the greater the pain, and the greater the pain, the longer its memory may haunt you. It is a lonely, private grief, like a divorce no one can see. But we're not married to this person, so why on earth does it hurt so much?
Oh, I think it's because friendship is optional. And so, like our family is stuck with us. Theoretically, they have to love us. They are biologically obligated for some level of love. But friendship is such a gift when someone gives it to you. You feel chosen and wanted by someone who is not genetically obligated to be there in your life. And I think we let our friends into these vulnerable places in our hearts. We share our true feelings. We share experiences. Friends experience sacred memories with us. Maybe they are there for your wedding, for the time when you fell in love. Maybe they're there at the birth of your children and you raise your little toddlers together. And so we let each other into those sacred places. Friends have a favorite spot on your couch. They have a favorite mug that they grab out of your cabinet when they come over for coffee. And so when something goes wrong and that person is not there, it's very painful. You feel a deep sense of loss, regret, rejection. If you know that you've made some mistakes, which usually it goes both ways, and we are hurt and we do some hurting, you may feel a deep sense of shame, like, how could I drive this person I love away? So it's very difficult. And I think it's lonely because it's hard to talk about. You can't post on Facebook, hey, everybody pray for me. My bestie and I are in a fight. Like, no, you sit alone in that grief and loneliness and insecurity. So I hope that this book is really the friend people need when they can't go anywhere else to get the support and encouragement through that pain.
I am currently reading it and I would say, yes, it is. And I think you and I are very much alike. I would read something and I would be like, oh my goodness, I would say or think or feel that exact same thing. So it is very much a great companion.
Mm.
Sometimes a friendship just fades, like nothing happens. There isn't pain or hurt feelings on either side, but there's no clarity or there's no closure necessarily to that.
Mm.
You mentioned long distance friendships, and you say that some people just don't know how to do it. And I think I've experienced that. I had a really close friend in college. And then once we moved away, it just must have been too far for her to maintain that friendship. And as far as I know, I didn't do anything wrong, but that has left this wound.
Mm-hmm.
How do we process that kind of break?
Yeah, those are hard. And I, as someone who has moved a lot, I have definitely experienced that, just the sadness of, wow, that friendship just didn't survive this transition. And I'm sure it's, sometimes I haven't nurtured a long distance relationship the way I should. Other times, other people just haven't reciprocated very well. And that is so painful. I think one of the things that I talk about in the book is I do think it helps if you can sort of categorize it in your mind, like, okay, so what did happen here? This friendship has faded. How would I classify what happened? Is it a situation like a long distance situation? And I just need to understand, hey, that's not a gift this person has. Like, she's just not great at nurturing long distance relationships. It's more about her not having that friendship skill than about something is wrong with me. It doesn't take away the pain, but it helps it feel a little less personal, I think,
Right.
when you can put it in those terms. Sometimes what is helpful is to look back and say, I think God gave me that friendship to see me through a certain season, and it was wonderful during that season. It was a gift and a blessing, and I will always treasure those memories, even if I'm a little sad that it's not here. But maybe it didn't have to be a lifetime friendship. You only have so much capacity for deeply devoted lifetime friendship. So maybe that's okay. So I've set some things to rest like that, even just like a feeling of guilt, like, why didn't I keep up better with that person? And I thought, maybe that's okay. And maybe we're both okay with that. So I think sometimes just kind of trying to figure out, okay, what happened? Was it seasonal? Was it an issue of the long distance thing? Was it an issue of neglect on both parts? And that's a shame. And we both, made some mistakes. It can just help you figure out what it is you're dealing with, how to put it to rest, how to pray about it. And it can keep you from becoming overly bitter and just stuck in those bad feelings.
This kind of leads us into things you can do to actually heal from that brokenness. What are some steps that we can take? Like, we know the friendship is over. We're in pain. Where do we go from there?
I think a lot of it has to do with prayer. And I realize that kind of sounds like a pat answer, but it's really not. God is the friend who will never leave. He is the friend who will never hurt us, who is always faithful, always empathetic, never too busy. And so I think we've got to lean into our walk with God and bring these feelings to him. I love that if you start searching for this through the Psalms, you will find psalm after psalm where David and other psalmists are pouring out grief to God over broken relationships and hurt and betrayal. So the Bible is inviting us to bring this stuff to God, especially in those friendship breakups where you are not able to have the reconciliation you want, or even the conversation that would give you closure. You can, I think, give yourself a sense of closure in prayer as a second option. Let's say maybe the person is just not in your life anymore. You can't contact them. They're gone. Maybe they've passed away. Maybe you don't know where they are, or maybe they're just not willing to talk to you, but you can bring that conversation to God and say, okay, Lord. And I even give some sample prayers in the book of like, here's what this might sound like. Here's what it sounded like for me. Lord, I still pray for reconciliation. I still want peace here, but I am handing this relationship over to you. I ask you to heal my heart, to heal my hurt, to protect me from bitterness. I ask you to be with my friend, to comfort her, heal her, help her in these areas where I see that some change may be needed. Help me to grow in the areas where I made mistakes. But Lord, I'm giving this friendship to you, and I am stepping forward, moving forward, and leaving this in the past in your all loving, all capable hands. I think a prayer like that, do not underestimate its power in healing your heart and sort of giving you that sense of closure. And, I've done all I can do, and God's got this, and I can move forward and I can move on.
Of course, closure would come from the great counselor.
Right.
Love that. While we are healing, and maybe before we feel over the breakup, how do we keep our friendship hurt from creeping into our other relationships?
Oh, that's such a great question, because it's hard. One of the things I talk about in the book is I tell the story of a broken mug. I was actually having tea with a friend, and her sweet husband had just made us tea. He handed me this steaming, scalding mug of fresh out of the pot tea. And as I took it in my hand, the handle separated from the mug. And so I'm holding the handle in one hand and the half empty mug in the other. Scalding tea goes all over me. Like, I'm jumping up screaming.
Oh my goodness.
Because my clothes were boiling and stuck to my body. I'm pulling my clothes away from myself. And it was sort of a traumatic experience for about 5 minutes. I ended up being fine. I wasn't no scars, no permanent damage done, but it was really upsetting in the moment and really scary. And so the next morning when I went to pick up a mug of coffee, I had this moment where I was like, wait, is this can I grab that mug by the handle as well? Or is this one going to let me down? And I picked up the mug, but then I got so nervous that my left hand came around underneath to cradle the bottom of the mug. And so I started holding mugs two-handed. And I developed this habit of holding all mugs two-handed. I had been burned one time, and I didn't want to risk being burned again. Now, I have only in my life ever had one mug break on me. But isn't that how it is in friendship? You may have only had one bad friendship experience, but you start reaching for all the rest of your friendships two-handed, guarding your heart a little bit, being careful, afraid of getting burned. I think, again, that healing process in prayer has to happen so that you don't take that baggage forward into friendships. I think sometimes even just acknowledging to ourselves, hey, I am afraid of this, but I can trust God to protect me. We can take our time in new friendships. We don't have to rush in. We can learn from the past. But I do want to encourage all of the listeners today, just don't put a fence up around your heart. You are worth knowing, and there are wonderful people out there still worth knowing who would be amazing friends, could be amazing friends to you. Just don't put that fence up around your heart and say, oh, I'm never giving my heart again. Keep taking little baby steps forward, little risks in those new friendships so that you don't bring that baggage forward and prevent yourself from making potentially some amazing new friendships in the future.
Yeah, that is great advice, Elizabeth. Probably the most important question is, why does God care about all of this when it comes to our friendships? He does. I know he does, but why?
God made us for relationship, first with him and then with other people. I mean, and we get it right away in the first few chapters of Genesis. He looks at poor, lonely little Adam and he's like, hey, it's not good for this guy to be alone. He needs a friend, he needs someone. He needs companionship. And we are made for that relationship. I mean, even Jesus, when people came to him and said, hey, what are the most important commandments? He said, well, love God and love your neighbor. Relationship is it. And so God cares when there's dysfunction. He cares and he hurts when we have hurt. He wants to help us heal. There is so much in the Bible that's really at its heart just designed to help us get along with each other, help us not get mad at each other, help us not hold grudges, help us not be jerks to each other, be selfish, put our own needs first. So many of the commandments and the advice and Paul's specific instructions in the letters, the 10 Commandments, it's all about, hey, be kind to one another so that you can have healthy relationships. So I think that's why God really cares. And he wants joy for us. God wants us to live a fulfilling, joyful life. That's how he made us to live.
Absolutely. That is all really encouraging. And I'm so glad to hear your steps toward healing and the prayers that we can pray. I am going to switch gears just a bit, though, from friendship. And I want to know a little bit more about you. So I would love to hear your favorite 5.
Ooh, I love that you do this.
Yeah. 5 things that you are wearing or watching or drinking right now that are just your favorite things.
Ooh, okay. All right. So I hope it's okay to do some things that I'm reading.
Yes, absolutely.
As a writer. Okay. Okay. So my first thing that I did, and this is actually just something that I'm doing. My first thing is just with self-care. I have recently started teaching bar classes, not bar like mixed drinks. Somebody in my church was like, wait, what are you doing? It's like, no.
BARRE.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's totally out of my comfort zone. I am not very, I'm not a ballerina. I have zero dance background, but it's just a really fun exercise. And I teach 1 class a week and it's so fun. And it's, it's community and exercise. So that's my first thing.
That sounds great.
My second thing is my favorite snack, Ghirardelli dark chocolate with sea salt caramel. I have it every night, a little bit. So good. And then the next 3 favorite 5 things I thought of, because I read like crazy and I write in multiple genres, or I picked some of my favorite books. So my favorite standalone middle grade novel is called When You Reach Me by Rebecca Stead. I think it is the most perfectly written middle grade novel ever. It's short and it packs so much in it. I study it like a textbook. It's so beautifully written.
I think my 13-year-old has either read it or it's on her list. That sounds so familiar.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, it's one that I could read it over and over and over again. And I do read it over and over again. I'm due to reread it soon. Oh, it's so beautiful. And then, okay, my favorite young adult series. I didn't pick a young adult standalone because I don't know, that's too difficult. But my favorite young adult series is called the Infernal Devices series by Cassandra Clare. And it has like vampires and werewolves in it, but that gives you kind of the wrong idea. It's really, at its heart, it's about friendship. It's a powerful book about, and it's modeled after David and Jonathan's friendship in the Bible. It's not
that's so cool.
book. Yeah, it's not a Christian author, not a Christian book, but has some friendship theme tie-ins there. And then my 5th thing, I'm on number 5, right?
Yeah.
Is my favorite recent picture book. I could never pick like a favorite, but recent one is called Cape by Kevin Johnson, and the illustrator is Kit Thomas. And it's helping little kids work through grief and loss, and in a really empowering way. And I didn't know that's what it was about when I started reading it. And then all of a sudden I was like crying over this book. I was like, so that's my most recent favorite picture book. So
those are so good. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, I think that's such a fun thing that you do.
I love hearing everyone's. And I asked listeners at one point, do you want me to do away with this segment of the show? Do you not want to hear it? Is that, and everyone was like, oh my goodness, no, keep it. We love that part.
So fun.
So Elizabeth, it has been so fun talking with you. And I would love to know, just what is your final word for us as women, as believers, for those of us in the middle, maybe, of a friendship falling out right now, or if you're trying to heal from a breakup that's already happened, or if you're like 20 years out from a breakup and once in a while, when you think of that person, you just still feel that little ache. Mm-hmm. What would you say to us?
I would just say that there is hope for your future friendships. There is hope for healing. God can help you to heal and lay it to rest. It may always be a point of sadness in your heart. I mean, I think when we've lost a relationship we really care about, we never stop missing that person or hurting or caring about that. but you can heal and you can lay it to rest and move forward. And I think there are 7 billion people that God made on this planet. And so please don't tell yourself that there's no friends out there for me. My grandma Jane Guba was an amazing example to me. She was one of the friendliest, most extroverted people, but in her 80s, my grandma was going to this little exercise class, a senior aerobics class, and she made all these new friends in her 80s. They started having coffee together once a week. And when my grandma passed away when she was 93, those ladies, her friends that she made in her 80s, helped to run her funeral. They were so sweet. Like our family became close to them. It's never too late to make new friends. There are great people out there. So I just encourage you, keep healing, keep leaning into God, and keep your heart open. You just never know when he's going to bring somebody great and somebody new into your life and your heart to fill your life with a little bit more joy.
I love that. And I had a grandma like that.
Oh, really? So great.
Yeah, she was friends with everyone. Elizabeth, I am so glad that I have gotten to meet you, and I can now call you my new friend.
Yes.
I'm even hoping to move south, and maybe I'll see you and you can be my in-person friend someday.
That would be amazing. Oh, it's been such a joy meeting you.
So thank you for coming on. Thank you for encouraging us in our friendships, whether they are strong or not so strong, or whether they have totally been severed. I appreciate all your words of wisdom.
Oh, thank you so much for being willing to dig into this kind of difficult topic with me. And it's just really been an honor and a joy to be on your show. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening. I bet you were able to see yourself in a few of the scenarios Elizabeth talked about. I definitely did. If you're in a season of hurt over a broken friendship, don't sit alone in your grief. Talk to the friend you're hurting over, if that is possible and appropriate. If it's not, talk to another sister in Christ. Definitely talk to God. Maybe read through the Psalms. Elizabeth talked about how the psalmists poured out their heart to God with their grief over their broken relationships. And of course, get a copy of her book, When a Friendship Falls Apart. It can be your companion through your friendship breakup. All of the ways to connect with Elizabeth are in the show notes for this episode. And if you want to hear more on this subject, I have a whole series called The Summer of Friendship, where myself and my guest hosts dive deeper into lots of topics under this umbrella of friendship. Let's be women who handle friendship, even the ones that fall apart, with grace and truth. I encourage you to start a Girls Talking Life group. Don't forget to grab the Quick Start guide in the show notes. Friend, don't let the conversation stop when the show is over. Share your story and start your own conversations with the girls in your life. I will see you back here in just a few weeks. Thanks for tuning in.